Hello everybody, Raven Knight here, and welcome back to our continuing Bible study series going through the life of David. We are on day 4 today, talking about resisting revenge. If you guys would open up your Bibles, if you have a Bible, to 1 Samuel chapter 24. We are going to be in the 24th chapter of 1 Samuel today. No jumping around today like we did last time. It's going to be all in one chapter. We got a lot to talk about today. If you are new to this series or new to this channel, welcome. My name is Raven. I hope you guys are excited to be here. We're going to be diving into the Bible so that I can share my faith with you guys and you guys may be able to enrich your faith. If you are a believer today, I hope that you take something amazing from this because I love this story. I love what the story of David has to tell us. And if you are new to the faith or not a believer, I hope that this reaches you. I hope that you enjoy our time here. But again, thank you so much for joining us. I really look forward to it. So some of you may be wondering, why the story of David? Why are we talking about David? Isn't he just the guy who killed Goliath? There's so much more to David's life than just killing the giant Goliath. David is someone who the Bible describes as a man after God's own heart. But as you look at the life of David, as you really analyze what he did throughout his life, you realize David was a flawed individual. He made a lot of mistakes, repeated mistakes too. So what I want to do here is, since we finished a Bible study series in Romans where we talked about what being a Christian looked like, what salvation looked like, there are lots of people, particularly Christians, who say, well, how can I please God when I am a sinner, when I am a flawed, weak sinner? I'm filled with so many flaws, there's no way I could live up to God's expectations. And I want to talk to you guys about David because he is the perfect example of a flawed individual, but still was a man after God's own heart. So we're talking about what it takes to be a man after God's own heart, and we are now talking about a situation with David that some of you may be able to relate to. Let me ask you guys a question before we dive into this. How many of you guys have ever had a complicated relationship with someone else? And I don't just mean romantically, I mean friendship-wise, enemy-wise. How many of you guys, if someone asked you, how's your life going, you would say, it's complicated? David would tell you his life is complicated right now. As of this chapter, in chapter 24 of 1 Samuel, David has been anointed to be the next king of Israel by Samuel. He slayed the giant Goliath and earned the love and respect of all of Israel. He became the harp player for the king, best friends with the king's son. He has won every battle against the Philistines he's been sent out to fight. His father-in-law, the king, because he married the king's daughter, is super jealous of him for all of his popularity and wants him dead, has tried to kill him on at least 2 occasions, and has forced David to flee for his life from Israel, all the way to Gath, where the Philistines are. And David, in all this time, has gone from a faithful man to a fearful man and is on the run from his father-in-law, who is also his best friend's dad, who is also his king. Yeah, David's life is pretty complicated. Now, one thing that we need to talk about today is when your life is complicated, there comes an instance where you may react poorly. I think we've all been there. How many of you guys can think of a person in your life that you want to get some vengeance on? Oh, I do. There are some people in your life who do you wrong, and in the back of your mind, you think, I would love to get back at that guy. I'd love to see him get his. In fact, I want to be part of him or her getting theirs. You've probably thought it. Sometimes you might even pop up out of your bed one night and just think, you know what? I want to get him like this. I hope he goes down like this. That is revenge. And I guarantee you, David has probably thought the same thing about Saul on more than one occasion. But David is currently hiding, and the Lord is about to deliver Saul into David's hands, and David is about to be presented with the opportunity to live out that little fantasy. But we're going to talk about what David does. I want you guys, if you have a piece of paper or a journal of some kind to take notes on, I want you to write this at the top. Resisting revenge, because there are 6 things that resisting revenge allows us to do. And we're going to talk about those through David today. So let's get started. We're going to start in verse 1 of chapter 24. After Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told, David is in the desert of En-Gedi. So Saul took 3,000 able young men from all Israel and set out to look for David and his men near the crags of the wild goats. He came to the sheep pens along the way. A cave was there, and Saul went in to relieve himself. David and his men were far back in the cave. Now, I want to paint a picture here for you guys real quick. En Gedi is not a happy place to be. The caves that we're talking about, there are natural caves near the Dead Sea built into the mountain range of these deserts. There are no restaurants, there are no shopping malls, there are no gas stations, there's nowhere to get a drink, get a bite to eat, and go relieve yourself. If you want to relieve yourself or rest or get out of the sun, you've got to go into one of these caves. So Saul, who needs to make a quick comfort stop, as my father would say, goes and picks one of these caves to go and relieve himself in. But what he doesn't know is that David and his men are hidden in this cave. David and his men are hidden in this cave. Saul has no idea they're there. His back is to them. And right now, he is completely exposed. He's dropped his pants to relieve himself. He cannot fight back. He is in David's hands. Revenge on a silver platter. And David's men know it. If you look here in verse 4, the men said, "This is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish." Then David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. He's right there. He's got the knife. He could end it. He could get the revenge he's been craving. The revenge his men are telling him to take. But he doesn't. And I'll tell you why. Number one, resisting revenge. Resisting revenge allows us to reveal our heart toward God. I want you to read verse 5. Right after he cut the corner of Saul's robe, afterward David was conscience-stricken for having cut off a corner of his robe. Conscience-stricken. In some translations, it says his heart was struck. He had a guilty conscience. How many of you guys, whenever you've committed a sin, whatever it was, right after you did it, or even before you did it, maybe it was before, you suddenly felt a sudden voice in your head or a sudden pang in your chest or some kind of signal to your body that said, this is wrong, don't do it, or what you did was wrong, stop it. How many of you guys have had that? I've had that many, many times. David felt it just from cutting the corner of Saul's robe. I'll bet, when he was cutting that robe, a part of him was thinking, why cut the robe when you could cut the throat? You could end this. Why cut the robe when you could cut the throat? But the very thought, the very action of cutting that robe struck David, and something in his heart said, stop right there, sir. You stop right there. That reveals our heart towards God. I'm going to tell you guys a story. This was years ago. There was a soccer champion in Britain named Bobby Moore, and he was going to get to meet the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth. And as he walked up to meet her, he'd just gotten done playing a game. His hands and body were muddy and dirty, and he's walking up to meet the Queen, and the Queen is extending her gloved hand out to shake his hand, and he sees that her gloved hand is white and pure, and he's about to dirty that glove with his dirty, muddy hand. So he is working while he's walking towards to wipe his hands on his shorts or grab a linen and wipe his hands off. He's trying to get himself clean before he wipes his hands on this queen's glove. You know what that is right there, guys? That is recognition of a reality. And that reality is this. He recognized that he was about to come in contact with royalty. Someone who was clean, someone who was not like him as he was, and he did not want to sully it. And that is the same with how we approach God. When we approach God, there is a consciousness in our mind that tells us this is wrong, I am sinful, I cannot approach this pure, holy being who is God, who is my Father, the way I am. And that is how David felt when he approached Saul ready to kill him. A part of him realized, I can't do this and consider myself clean. Number 2, resisting revenge, it doesn't just reveal your heart towards God, it reveals your heart towards others. It reveals your heart towards others. I'm willing to bet that many of you, as I said at the beginning, have someone in your life you'd like to see hurt. You'd like to see them get paid back for all the wrong they did you or someone else. Believe me, I have been there. There are times When someone wrongs me, I play over and over and over again in my mind how I would get back at them, how I would make them the fool, how I would put them down. And believe me, I'm a writer. I have a very vivid imagination about these things. And in my mind, I think about it. And I probably shouldn't. Because at the end of the day, there's a fact that I need to hold on to, a point that I need to maintain. That to have a heart for God means to have a heart for others. And we'll see more of that as we read further into this. But resisting revenge, resisting the opportunity for revenge, reveals our heart towards God and our heart towards others. The third thing resisting revenge does is it gives us the opportunity to evaluate advice. Resisting revenge allows us to evaluate advice. Let's read a little further into this. We said it earlier. We were reading it just earlier when David was given the opportunity. In verse 4, the men said, "This is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish." And here it is. There's your advice. How many of you guys have friends who give good, solid, godly advice? Do you have a friend in your life who gives you good, solid, godly advice? How about friends who give you advice that you question? Or maybe you have a friend in your life who you know, if they tell you to do something, you better do the opposite. And you guys have friends like that. Maybe you have some of all three. I know I do. But resisting revenge allows us to evaluate advice. If something once happened to me at work, okay, and I'm not going to go into the details of it, but I told my buddy at work what happened, and he said, "Dang, man, what are you going to do about it?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, I'll tell you what you ought to do." And then he told me a way that I could get back at this person, and to be honest with you, it sounded good. But the more I thought about that idea, the more I realized it's not right. Oh, I wanted to do it, but it's not right. And I never did it. Because resisting revenge means that you evaluate the advice you're given. David even responded with that. He walked back to them after cutting it in verse 6. He said to his men, "The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lay my hand on him, for he is the anointed of the Lord." With these words, David sharply rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul, and Saul left the cave and went his way. So what we can take from that is simple. David's men tell him, "David, this is it, bro. This is it. You got this. Saul's right there. The Lord has given him to you. Go there and kill him. You got this, man. It's time for you to take the throne." David sneaks over like he's going to do it, cuts the hem of his robe, then realizes what he's about to do and goes, no, and goes back to his guys and says, "No, I refuse to do this. I'm not doing this. I'm not going to lay a hand on the Lord's anointed." And his men probably go, "Oh, don't worry, David. We'll get it for you. Too much of a pussy to have to do it yourself. Okay, we'll take care of it." So they're about to go do it, and David, as it says, rebukes his men and wouldn't allow them to do it either. Sometimes, when we resist revenge, we have to evaluate the advice we're given and the friends we have and what they're going to do. David rebuked his men and would not allow them to touch Saul, and Saul left the cave and went his way. It's not an easy thing to do sometimes, to tell our friends, "I disagree." Or, "No, I'm not doing that." Because to many people, resisting revenge looks weak. See, because in our society, in our worldview, and this has been the case for thousands of years, might makes right. If someone does wrong to you, you need to do wrong back to them. If someone hurts you, you need to make sure you hurt them right back. An eye for an eye, as the saying goes. But sometimes to show real strength is to know when not to retaliate. Number 4, resisting revenge gives us the opportunity to demonstrate faith. David demonstrates his faith in what he does next. David demonstrates his faith. And how does he do it? He does it in 3 ways. First, he confesses to his men. We just read that. "The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lay my hand on him, for he is the anointed of the Lord." And with those words, he rebuked his men. He confessed to his men. He told them, "I'm not doing this. I can't do this, guys. The Lord will not be happy with me." You know, one of the things that I struggle with is some of the sins that I struggle with, I take them to my buddy Jay, who's my accountability partner, and he and I talk about them. And, you know, sometimes I have to confess to my friends, man, this is what I'm going through. This is what I'm struggling with. And they help me. Now, the thing is, Jay does not judge me. He doesn't sit there and go, wow, you're an awful person. Like, no, he doesn't. He says, no, I get it. And sometimes he'll even say, I struggle with those things too. But the first thing we ought to do is we ought to confess to someone that we trust, be it a friend, a family member, a pastor, whoever it is. You ought to tell someone that you're struggling. The second thing he does is he confronted Saul. How many of you guys would confront the person who is wronging you? That's not common. Usually we try to avoid confrontation. But David confronts Saul. In verse 8, then David went out of the cave and called out to Saul, my lord the king. When Saul looked behind him, David bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. In verse 9, he said to Saul, why do you listen when men say David is bent on harming you? David has confronted Saul. He has literally walked out of the cave to go see Saul. How much you want to bet David's men were like, David, no, you idiot. What are you doing? Why are you going out there? He's going to kill you. Because Saul had 3,000 men. All Saul had to do was go, oh, David, there you were. Fool for you for not killing him when you had the chance. And then just kill him. But David prostrates himself. He walks out and bows to the king and says, why do you listen when men say David is bent on harming you? He confronted him. And then the third way he does it, and this is the big one, he conveyed God's grace. Let me be real, guys. One of the hardest things for us to do as Christians is to convey God's grace, but we see that here. Let's read a little further in verse 10. This day, this is David talking, this day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not lay my hand on my Lord because he is the Lord's anointed. See my father? He calls him father because he's his father-in-law, okay? See my father? Look at this piece of your robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but did not kill you. See that there is nothing in my hand to indicate that I am guilty of wrongdoing or rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life. Let me translate what was just said there. King Saul, you are my father-in-law. You are my king. And you are the father of my best friend, and there are people telling you that I'm out to hurt you, and you've been trying to kill me. You've been trying to do wrong to me. I had the chance to take your life for it, but look at what I got in my hand, Saul. I have the hem of your robe. I could have taken your life. My men wanted me to take your life, but I didn't do it. Why? Because I care about you, and I want to extend you the grace you won't give me. Do you know what that is? That's God's grace. Because it is the exact same thing with how God treats us. The Bible tells us, if you listen to my Roman series, you remember, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. There is not one righteous person among us, not one. No one is sinless. We have all betrayed God. We have all been in rebellion against God. And God has every right to say, all right, you want to rebel against me? You want to break my rules? You want to break my covenant? I'm going to take you out. But God says no. I love you, and I want you to have the opportunity to receive grace. I am going to extend grace to you. We don't deserve it, because what grace is at the end of the day is receiving what you do not deserve, being given what you do not deserve. We deserve death. Saul deserved death. But David spared him. David said, Saul, I could take you out, and maybe I should, but I won't. How could I? I love you too much. The way God says to us, I could destroy you, but I love you too much. I want to extend grace to you. That is how David showed faith. Number 5, resisting revenge gives us an opportunity to accept God's timing. We live in an age where we want everything now. I want things now. Just the other day, had a situation where my computer was running unbelievably slowly. Just so slow. It was taking forever for pages to come up. It was buffering all the time. I kept getting notifications of this page not responding. It was awful. And I was livid. I was yelling at my computer. I was banging my finger on the keypad. I was so mad. The computer was going too slow for my liking. And that's not the only time. How many of you guys have gone through something like this? When you go to a drive-thru and you like a Chick-fil-A or something, and you just see cars wrapped around this restaurant, just a massive long line. I'm bad with lines. I've always been bad with lines. I can be so impatient sometimes. Just ask my parents. When I was a little kid, I hated lines. I could not stand it. I wanted things now. I wanted things to happen now and in my way. I want to get to Japan and live there and be a missionary over there and become a teacher over there. Well, I want it now. When is that going to happen for me? When is this going to happen? When is life that way I want it going to happen now? And it's the same thing with revenge. When is this person going to get his revenge? How long is he going to go without getting his? How long am I going to have to wait until revenge is finally mine? Let's read verse 12, because I think this is important. Verse 12 says, May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge the wrongs you have done to me, but my hand will not touch you. As the old saying goes, from evildoers come evil deeds, so my hand will not touch you. Against whom has the king of Israel come out? Who are you pursuing? A dead dog? A flea? May the Lord be our judge and decide between us. May he consider my cause and uphold it. May he vindicate me by delivering me from your hand. Again, I'll translate what he's essentially saying there. He's saying, what have I done to you, Saul? What have I done to you? Why do you come after me? But let our actions be judged by the Lord. Let the Lord judge me and judge you as he sees fit, but I'm not going to touch you. David is allowing God to do things in his way and in his timing. He's saying, you know what, Saul, I could take you out right now, and you know what, it's probably what you deserve, but I'm not going to do it now because I'm not going to do wrong by the Lord. Let the Lord judge us by our actions. When I was given the opportunity to do wrong, I didn't do it. When you were given the opportunity to do wrong, you have done it. Let the Lord decide between the two of us who is more righteous. Let the Lord decide things on his own time and in his own way. He's essentially saying, what are you even trying to do here, Saul? You realize that all you're doing is making a fool of yourself and trying to kill someone who's done you no wrong. Who's the more righteous person in this? It is not easy to give up opportunities like this. An opportunity to laugh in someone else's face and say, I gave you yours. Funny thing happened last night. I was playing For Honor on a stream, and there was this player who was acting real toxic, just dropping a lot of chat spam, emote spamming us, and he won the first match. And it cut to my dead character's body, and he was emote spamming over me, dropping thanks over and over again. He was real full of himself. So we go into the next match, and we destroyed him, absolutely wrecked him. And what did I do? You can tell what I did. I emote spammed and thanked him over his body. And it was funny. We were all having a good laugh about it. That is the world of a video game, but it goes to a larger point. I could have been the bigger person. I could have said, no, I'm not going to treat you the way you treated me. I'm not going to take that easy, low-hanging fruit. In time, you'll get yours. In time, you will get your revenge. And maybe God was teaching me something through last night. Maybe God was allowing me to learn something through last night. Now, granted, that's a video game, and video games are all in good fun. They're not real life, but we're talking about the real world here. And in the real world, sometimes we don't get revenge as quickly as we'd like it. I mean, in last night's game, I beat the guy in the very next match. I got my vindication right away. But sometimes God doesn't grant us vindication right away. Sometimes he says, sorry, but it's not time yet. And it is very hard to accept that sometimes we don't get the things we want right away. When we can learn to resist revenge, we learn to accept God's timing of things. And number 6, last one. Resisting revenge allows the option for change. the opportunity for change. Let's read a little further. Let's see how Saul reacts. In verse 16, when David finished saying this, Saul asked, "Is that your voice, David, my son?" And he wept aloud. "You are more righteous than I," he said. "You have treated me well, but I have treated you badly. You have just now told me about the good you did to me. The Lord delivered me into your hands, but you did not kill me. When a man finds his enemy, does he let him get away unharmed? May the Lord reward you well for the way you treated me today. I know that you will surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hands. Now swear to me by the Lord that you will not kill off my descendants or wipe out my name from my father's family." So David gave his oath to Saul. Then Saul returned home, but David and his men went up to the stronghold. Sounds pretty, doesn't it? Man, that's a storybook ending. Saul realized what David did for him, and now he's going, David, you did me good, man. You're right, I was an asshole. I was awful to you. I did so much wrong. I did terrible things to you, and you forgave me when I didn't deserve it. Oh, man, you really will be the king of Israel. I can't believe how foolish I was, how stupid I was. Please just promise me one thing. When you become king, don't wipe out my family. Don't destroy my family, please. Just spare them. And David goes, I won't touch them. I mean, after all, your daughter's my wife and your son's my best friend. I'm not going to do anything to them. And Saul goes his own way. That sounds great, doesn't it? But if you skip ahead to chapter 26, literally 2 chapters after this, Saul comes right back to kill David. And you want to know what David does then? He doesn't kill him. He extends grace once again. I'm going to tell you guys a little saying from my old pastor. Some people take grace, some people fake grace, but whatever they do, we offer grace all the same. Some people take grace. Some people fake grace. But we offer grace all the same. Regardless of what they offer. Jesus famously said to Peter, because Peter asked, how many times must we forgive people who wrong us? And Jesus said, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. And some may say, hold on, let me pull out my calculator and type that in. No, that's not what we mean. It means you always forgive, every time, in every way. If someone does you wrong 100 times, you show them grace 100 times. Because I guarantee you this, the moment you were baptized and you thought, I'll never sin again, I guarantee you sinned again. It probably didn't take very long. You may not have done it intentionally, it may have been a mistake, but you did it again. Do you think that God should go, oh, well, I forgave you that one time, but not again? How awful would that be? Believe me, God extends grace every time, and we should do the same. Why? Because it gives the people we extend grace to the chance to do better. And you want to know a great example? Paul. We read Romans in our last Bible study series. Paul was the author of Romans. In fact, he's the author of most of the books of the New Testament. And he was a serious sinner. Back when he was known as Saul of Tarsus, the man was an infamous genocidal killer of Christians. He was so zealous about the law of Moses and about the Jewish faith, he traveled around the world of Israel and killed Christians wherever he found them. But Jesus met him on the road to Damascus and said, Saul, you're stopping this right now. You're stopping this right now. And Saul, after getting to Damascus, after being struck blind by Jesus, was met by a Christian named Ananias, who God told to heal Saul. He did so, and Saul converted. He accepted forgiveness, became Paul, and then became the most famous evangelist and famous missionary of all time. By extending forgiveness, by avoiding the chance for revenge, because God could have struck Paul dead. Jesus could have said, Saul, you've been killing all of my children, you've been killing my followers, it's your turn to face the same. Goodbye, and then kill him. He didn't. He gave him forgiveness because he knew there's an opportunity for you to do better. You have the chance to be one of my best, and because he accepted it, he changed. When we resist revenge, when we offer forgiveness where people do not deserve forgiveness, there is the chance for them to change, and what change there could be. Saul did not. Saul faked grace. He said, "Oh yeah, David, you spared me. Thank you for sparing me, man. I really appreciate it." And then when he went home, and then a couple weeks later, he turned right back around. Now, that's not to say, let me clarify this, that's not to say that just because you relapse or fall back into old habits or sin, it doesn't mean that you have not been saved. I've fallen into that trap too. That's a trap the devil likes to throw at us. But what it does mean is that you need to get your heart right with God. It means you need to get your heart right with God when that happens. Keep in mind, Paul in Romans even said, I still mess up. I still face sins. There are times where I do things that I never thought I wanted to do. You know? Even when we're saved, it doesn't mean we're free from temptation. It doesn't mean that we're never going to sin again. But the fact is, God extends grace to us each and every time because there is the opportunity for us to change, and through our change, we can do so much good. Chapter 24 of 1 Samuel is a fascinating piece because we learn what it really means to resist revenge. In fact, if you read chapter 25, we see something similar. We're not going to go into that today. We don't have time. We've already gone pretty long, but we may pick it up there next time. But I hope you guys have taken something from this. I hope you guys have learned something from this. And I don't just mean this in terms of revenge either. I mean whenever you're pressured, whenever you feel pressured to take out some aggression or vengeance on someone else, you may even feel justified in doing it, and I'll bet you'll feel real good about it. But when you learn to resist revenge, when you learn to put revenge aside and put God first and put grace first, you'd be surprised what happens. Before we close out today, I want to say a few things. Right now, my little brother and his team are over in Romania, spreading the word there amongst the gypsies. It's an excellent opportunity for him. He did this last year, and I know he's excited to do it again this year. So keep him in your prayers as he does that. I also want to lift up all of my community in prayer, whatever they're going through. I know a lot of people talk to me about what they're going through personally in their personal lives. I pray for all of you, and I lift all that up to you guys. Please, guys, continue to walk in Christ. Continue to do your best to stay close to God over the course of this next week. It is spring break in my area, so I will be very, very busy with work. But I promise to chat with you guys as often as I can. Next week, we will go into the next part of David's life. I'm very excited for that. I hope you are too. Thank you guys so much. And as always, I will see you in my next video. Take care.